All right, and let me get my screen share restarted here. Okay. All right, so welcome to Clarity Under Pressure with LaToya Johnson-Rainey. LaToya is one of our longest tenured facilitators. She has also been a member of a peer group with Entrepreneurs Forever back before it was called Entrepreneurs Forever. And she's also on our board. So Toya is extremely important to the organization, and I'm really grateful for her making this time today and sharing this information. But she's already gone through this method with a few of her peer group members and has found it really helpful to several business owners who were in the midst of some overwhelm. So we're going to go through this whole process with her and learn a little bit more about how to make better decisions. Let me just quickly review the agenda for today. I'm not going to say too much about Entrepreneurs Forever. You all know who we are. I will share a little slide about our upcoming program, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. And once the presentation itself is concluded, we'll go into sharing and open discussion. So let's see. Jim and Joan, I know both of you right now may not be in a place to share, but if you are able to access the chat, or if you're able to come off mute, you can tell us where you are. It'd be good for Toya to know a little bit about you. Hi, Jim.
How you doing?
Always good to see you. How are you?
It's good to be seen. It's better than the alternative.
That is true.
I
We'll
think
go ahead and
I've
introduce
met
yourself to
Jim.
Toya.
I
You've met
believe
Jim? Jim?
in a deep dive, I'm
Nice.
not a deep dive, the onboarding. I think I
Oh,
did your
excellent.
onboarding. I remember your business. Not sure if it was the onboarding or another deep dive or something, but we've talked and I remember your business. But go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I don't know how long ago it was, but this January we actually pivoted. We're offering independent third-party cybersecurity assessments, so black box assessments, penetration testing. We go after what you got. If we find any vulnerabilities, we quietly give you the solution, let you fix it, and then validate that fix. Makes my marketing job tough because no clients wants to go, "Hey, I'm vulnerable." It makes a lot of sense. But we got a special going on this May, $888 for a full black box assessment. Located Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Jim. And Joan just let me know that she doesn't have a microphone on this computer, so no worries there, Joan. You can enjoy the content, and we'll get this moving along. So, Entrepreneurs Forever, empowering small business owners to grow thriving businesses that sustain their families and support their communities. I think you all know we primarily do that through peer groups and then presentations like these. Next month's deep dive will be planning backward for success. That's with Terry Delotti, one of our other very long tenured facilitators. And he'll be talking about how to use where you're heading as a compass to plan better. And today's topic is clarity under pressure. Toya, do you want to briefly go ahead and introduce your business background? Just kind of give us a sense of what you've done as an entrepreneur?
Sure. So I am very like hands-on and interactive. So for today, we do have a few of those interactive things, but I'll try to tailor it a little bit so that it is more presentation style than, you know.
Well, and Cindy just joined us. So Cindy, I don't know if you're in a position to come off mute, but we're hoping to have a little interaction here. We're lower on our numbers in attendance today by comparison to who registered. But we would love to get some interaction when it's possible.
Okay. Do you want Cindy to go first, or do you want me to just continue as far as the business background and things like that?
You go ahead, Toya. Cindy, if you're able to get in the chat and just tell us a little bit about who you are and your business, that would be great. But Toya, feel free to introduce yourself and your background.
Okay. So LaToya Johnson-Rainey, I am a facilitator. I initially joined Mansman Foundation before it was Entrepreneurs Forever with my business, A Hair Boutique Shady Side, which is a wig salon/boutique located in Shady Side of Pittsburgh, where we cater to women who experience hair loss through some sort of trauma. We have a lot of people who are going through chemo, trichotillomania, dialysis, things like that. Since that business started, I've opened another business, an interior decorator, where we do interior design for commercial businesses and small businesses. And the whole premise of that is to build things that are aesthetically pleasing, but also functional and foundationally pleasing towards where the business is and where it's going. So, yeah, that's a little bit about the business background. In addition to that, just facilitating, writing business curriculum. I've written business curriculum for several universities, for Entrepreneurs Forever, for Pittsburgh Board of Education. So that's my lane. And this is my jam, though, being with other small business owners, because that emotional connection is there. And we know small businesses need it, so.
Thanks, Toya. And we did have Summer also join us. So, Summer, or if you or Cindy is in a position to pop off mute and introduce yourself. Hi, Cindy. I see you just did.
Hi. Yeah, I'm in the car. So, but I'm Cindy Berselli, of fine art painting, and I paint mostly wild animals, and I do a lot of pet portraits. And I work in pastels, oils, and acrylic, but pastels is my preferred medium. And mostly keeping busy with commissions, which is really nice. So that's about what I do.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Cindy. I'm really glad to have you here. And Summer, if you're able to introduce yourself, and Jerry's here too. So we're getting a few of the folks that I was hoping to see in the room.
Hey, Jerry. Hey, Summer.
Jerry or Summer, if either of you wants to say hello and just tell us who you are, there you are. Hi, Summer.
Hi, my name's Summer. I'm not sure what we're supposed to cover in the introductions, but
Just a very brief intro to who you are, where you are, and what your business is.
okay. My name's Summer. I'm in Pittsburgh, and I'm working on, like all of the other tech bros in the universe, an app based on Gen AI.
Okay, nice to have you here. Thanks for being here. And we are recording right now up until the share portion of there will be some interaction throughout, because Toya is not one to make you sit and listen to a lecture. But we will stop the recording before the end, so that if there's anything sensitive that you want to talk about and not have it preserved, we have time for that as well at the end. And Jerry, it's really good to see your name pop up. I hope you're doing well. Hi.
Hey, yes, how are you?
Good to see you. Yeah, good, good. And I'm so glad you could be here.
Well, thanks. Yeah, Jerry Gotti, Revitalize Wilkinsburg, acquisition and management of real estate in Wilkinsburg.
Good to have you. Thanks to
Jerry,
everyone.
you are the owner of the building we used to have our meetings in, correct? Right on Wood Street. Is this the same?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew that. Hi.
It's been a long time, but it's great to have you here. All right, Toya, I'm going to hand the screen share over to you and let you get started. And I'll keep an eye on the chat. Summer, I'll give you my little brief about how that happened with my picture in just a second. So
It's really cool. Okay. So I do like to have a presentation available just so that we can follow along. Also, sometimes people are more visual learners or listeners than actual listeners. So you'll see the slides and they coordinate with what we'll talk about. I always like to start off with a discussion question, and it definitely has something to do with our topic and clarifying what we're going to do later on. So the question I want to start off with for you guys is, what pressure have you normalized that probably shouldn't feel normal? What pressure in your business have you made like, okay, this is a normal thing, but probably shouldn't feel that normal?
Not enough revenue.
Putting out a perfect product.
Worrying about getting another commission.
I love that you guys like easily identified that. That means that it is really a normal thing that shouldn't feel normal for you, right? Especially that putting all of them really, but that putting out something that's perfect, because sometimes that can cause paralysis analysis. Or like, how are you really getting a prototype? And will it ever be perfect? What is perfect? All of those things. So thanks for sharing that. Um, Operating, without enough revenue, all of those things are things that probably shouldn't feel normal that, as business owners, we definitely do. Does anyone want to add anything to that before we go on? Okay. So poll question, if you can put it in the chat, what currently creates the most pressure in your business right now? If it's not one of these things, put 11 and just say other.
Toya, you're in the chat as well, right? So you're seeing some of these.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing them. Yep, you can change your answer to Joe somewhere.
For anyone watching the recording, Joan said 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So lots of pressures.
Okay, you got 6, yeah. Yeah, I like that effect too. I'm gonna have to ask Deb how she did that. But that's pretty cool. The photo you had. Okay. I always like to do these poll questions just to check the temperature to see where we are. All of these things are things that we can address today. Really just where those pressures are coming from, how to alleviate some of them, and really understand if they're true pressures or if they're things that we're putting on ourselves, if they're things that modernity is putting on us, if they're things that social media are putting on us, or outside forces, and how to get out of our own way with those. One thing that I always like to revert to is some kind of methodology or symbolism. This iceberg model to me was super cool because it gave like clarity to what we see, right? And what the outside world may see. So when we think about our issues and things that we go through within our businesses, there's those things that are above the surface. They usually come from some kind of fear, ignorance, and not knowing, things that people don't really realize that you have to do in business. Um, those type of things, the stress, the frustration, missed deadlines, hiccups. Those are all the things that people may see. But underneath that iceberg is where the real growth is and where we really live as entrepreneurs. And those are the things that have to do with like curiosity, compassion, or courage. A lot of those things come from patterns and habits that we built or a deeper purpose for our business. So, with thinking about that, what are some things that may be a symptom that the top of the iceberg is what's showing, but really there's something that's beneath it?
I don't know that I understand.
So, basically, just thinking about the pressures in our business, right? You may be, I'm trying to think of one that someone just named, Summer at the.
Well, I can use the example of lack of clients and, desperate for revenue, but you don't want to feel that because everyone can smell desperation 1,000 miles away. So
Mhm.
you kind of have to squash that down when you're presenting yourself to new clients because you don't want to become desperate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the deeper purpose and the root of that would be, what are we dealing with underneath that in order to get those clients? Like that may be the thing that you see is the top of the iceberg, the lack of revenue, but underneath it, would be the lack of clients or a funnel or maybe marketing leads, things like that. The deeper rooted issue of it and not
It could
the,
be messaging.
yeah, right.
I'm thinking about a conversation I had with a friend recently, and she was telling me about she was really frustrated with a small business that she's been a client of for a long time, and they've started to miss her appointments. Like they've rescheduled the last two cleanings. It's a cleaning service, several times. And we were talking about, not knowing what's going on beneath the surface for them. But the way that it looks to her is like, well, they're just, they don't care about my business anymore. They've grown beyond needing my business, and now they're treating me differently because I'm not as important a customer to them. So I was sort of talking through with her whether or not that's actually true, but I think it's an example of what you're saying here. It's what she sees may not be what's actually below the surface.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like what Jim said about messaging. That brings me to an example that I always think about when I was learning about SEO. And when you're within your business, you may use language that is specific towards that business, but your consumer may not understand that language and they may be looking for something way more generic, right? So for my business and a wig business, we might call them units or pieces or chitels. No one else is looking for that. They're looking for a hair replacement. That's simple, right? A project that we had when I was learning about SEO was for water jugs. And the word that they used were jugs. So they had natural jugs, synthetic jugs. And when they looked at their internet usage and people going to their website, it was extreme. But the amount of people that actually turned those leads into sales or decreased. Well, come to find out, they were using the word jugs. So people were looking for boobs, right? So it's like, no, may not be the right language that you want to use. You might want to just use water bottles or something more simple. So really getting below that surface and figuring out what is the core issue and not allowing pressures or the need to act determine those things. I like what Jim said about desperation. Sometimes if you feel like you need sales, it may come off as desperate because you feel like, oh, I need it now. I need it now. But really, what does now mean, right? So iceberg model is really, really, we're going to get to it more deep at the end where it'll break it down and you can actually figure out where are those root symptoms coming from.
When I first looked at this, I thought of relationship building too, right? Because everyone puts their best foot when they first meet them, but you don't know what goes on behind closed doors,
Absolutely.
And new hires. You could also use this for onboarding new hires.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Social media too, right? Because you may see your competitor out there and think like, oh, they're doing it big. And meanwhile, their whole budget is going to content, but they're not really making that money or they're recycling information or using AI for information, So yeah. Okay. So tonight, what we're going to explore is how pressure really works, why we normalize it, why we shouldn't normalize it, and how to build clarity so that you can lead with your business with intention and not with outside noise. That's a lot of what we discover and go through today is outside noise. And so we want to normalize getting to the root of things and having that clarity. This is a topic that I absolutely love because everything now is like urgent, reactive, do it now. If you have a concept, boom, press it out now. You don't want to delay, but finding that sweet spot of figuring things out, stopping, having clarity, and then moving is important. In modern culture, it pushes us towards speed, urgency, visibility. Everything has to be visible. How many times do you guys go maybe to your hairstylist or anywhere and are like, okay, let me take a picture. Let me show that you're doing this. And it's like, wait, I'm not my best self right now. No, you can't do that. Everything doesn't have to be so visible. We can do the work for real and not have to have so much visibility, right? Um, Constant responsiveness. How many ways are, people able to really contact us? Can we really take that time and just be like right now we're working on our business. This is so important. because so many people, especially entrepreneurs, small businesses, are in a day-to-day and are working in a business, and you're running in place. So how much time can you really devote to working on your business and not having to be responsive and looking at your phone like, do I have a Slack? Did I get something in my scheduling system? Is someone DMing me? Is someone emailing me? Is someone texting me? All of those things. And then we deal with overconsumption. Soon as you have one idea going, here comes another one, here comes another one, and here comes another one. So how do we really balance those things? Um, Sometimes it's easy to internalize those things too, because they're so constant. So the whole thing that we want to explore today is clarity does not happen by accident, being aware, and then making it a choice, taking back that command of your business, of the choices that you're making, of the customers that you're getting, of the marketing that you're putting out, and making sure that it's authentically you in your business. Does that make sense? Is
Yeah.
that something? Yeah, go
Toya,
ahead.
can you just say one more thing, like sentence about clarity as a leadership advantage? What if you aren't leading a team right now? How does clarity matter for business owners that don't necessarily have an internal team?
Yeah. So leadership doesn't only go with people or your team, it goes with your mission, right? It goes with who your consumer is, who your client is. I don't know if you guys did in your groups grading your customer, where you have this A client, they hit all the marks, the price point is there, they're loyal, they're consistent. And then you have this E client that you just take on, but they're not your ideal client. They always want extra. You get nervous when you see them coming up. So clarity definitely doesn't only revolve around an actual team. It revolves around your finances. It revolves around your systems, your processes, your consumer, all those things that go into the pie to make it successful.
Thank you.
Mhm. I think the biggest thing that comes down to is intention. Like knowing what those things are so that you can be more intentional with it. Okay. All right. So following that, what I really like to do is stop, look, and listen. So we already stopped. This is stopping right now, taking this time to work on your business. Looking is observing those patterns, increasing awareness, and seeing what others may miss. That's part of the reason why we're an entrepreneur, right? That's part of the reason why you decided to do this for yourself, because you seen a need and you decided to fill it. The next thing is listening. A lot of times we think we're listening to our client, but we're not. That's why our messaging is wrong. We think we're listening to our financial advisors or accountant, but we're not. That's why our budget is off. We think we're listening to our systems, but we're not. That's why we're not utilizing everything that that system has to offer. And you may have way too many different systems where maybe you only needed the two. So one thing that I learned by doing this course called Theory U through MIT with Dr. Otto is listening levels, right? And what that really means. So what I want to do just to test our listening is I'm going to play a YouTube video, and it's a poem. And I just want you guys to observe and listen. And then we're going to come back and see what we heard. And then I'm going to introduce these different levels of listening, and we'll go back. Let me stop share real quick, just because it's easier to transition like this. Hold on. And I'm going to share again, okay? This poem is pretty cool too, because we have some tech people here. So I think you guys will enjoy. Can you guys see that? All right.
Introducing the new Apple iPerson Complete with multi-touch and volume control. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? My world is so digital. I have forgotten what that feels like. It used to be hard to connect when friends formed cliques, but it's even more difficult to connect now that cliques form friends. But who am I to judge? I face Facebook more than books face me, hoping to book face-to-faces. I update my status, 420 space to prove I'm still breathing. Failure to do this daily means my whole web-wide world will forget that I exist. But with 3,000 friends online, only 5 I can count in real life. Why wouldn't I spend more time in the world where there are more people that like me? Wouldn't you? Here, it doesn't matter if I'm an amateur person as long as I have a profile. My smile is 50% genuine and 50% genuine HD. You would need Blu-rays to read the whites of my teeth, but I'm not that focused. 10 tabs open, hoping my problems can be resolved with a 1600 by 1700 revolution. This is a problem with this evolution doubled over. We used to sit in treetops till we swung down to stand upright and someone slipped a disc. Now we're doubled over at desktops. From the Garden of Eden to the branches of Macintosh, apple picking has always come at a great cost. iPod, iMac, iPhone, iChat. I can do all of these things without making eye contact. We used to sprint. We used to sprint to pick and store blackberries. Now we run to the Sprint store to pick blackberries. It's scary. I can't hear the sound of Mother Nature speaking over all that tweeting. And along with it is our ability to feel as it's fleeting. You would think these headphone jacks inject in the flesh the way we connect the disconnect power on. So we are powerless. They got us love drugged like e-pills. So we e-trade, email, emotion like e-commerce because now money can buy love for $9.95 a month. Click to proceed to checkout. Click to X out where our hearts once were. Click. I've uploaded this hug. I hope she gets it. Click. I'm making love to my wife. I hope she's logged in. Click. I'm holding my daughter over a Skype conference call while she's crying in the crib in the next room. Click. So when my phone goes off of my hip, I touch and I touch and I touch because in a world where there are voices that are only read and laughter is never heard, I'm so desperate to feel that I hope the technology can reverse the universe until the screen can touch me back. And maybe it will when our technology is advanced enough to make us human again.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me share screen a bit. Okay. When listening or really listening to that, what did you guys notice?
It's a broad question. What kind of specifics are you looking for here?
Just what stood out to you?
I noticed I was fearful because it's true.
Jones saying she noticed he accented his points with movements.
Okay.
Yeah, his movements were robotic in nature.
I noticed like a lot of acceleration in both like speed and like he got louder and like it started calmer and built to a crescendo.
Good deal. All right, so what I'm going to do now is introduce different levels of listening and see if it resonates a little different. So in Theory U, there are 4 levels of listening. The first level is downloading. That's a lot of times where people get stuck, right? That's more so listening for what they already know. So if you're listening to your customer or listening to someone tell a story, you're already downloading the information of what you already know, what is familiar. Second level is factual listening, listening for what you don't know, listening to learn, listening to understand something new. Third level is that empathetic listening. So it's heart to heart, listening to feel, understanding the other person's point of view, understanding or giving compassion or relating to what they're saying or what they're feeling. So empathetic listening. Fourth level is something that most people don't get to or don't realize is happening, and that's generative listening. And that's listening with all of those things, but deep from inside, too deep inside someone else for the greater good of something bigger. And that's where a lot of change happens, especially in leadership or in business. One isn't better than the other. You use different ones for different times depending on what the outcome is. But having this awareness allows you to assess where you're listening from. So once you know these and you start utilizing it, and the course that I took, we had an assessment where we did it every single day. Any conversation you had that stood out, at the end of the day, you would do this assessment and say, okay, initially I listened to just say what I already knew, but I seen a shift from 1 to 3, or I seen a shift from 2 to 3. And what am I really hearing? Right. So once you have that like awareness of different levels of listening, you can tune it and figure out it's not that you're changing it, it's just that awareness of doing it, which really, really helps in our business because now you're listening for clarity and the overall mission and what is it putting out there. Does that make sense? Have anyone ever heard of this method or utilized it?
One thing that with you going through this, it kind of struck to me is perspective. Every time you change your perspective, what you're looking at changes. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, walking in the woods, you see nothing but trees, but take 2 more steps and the woods open wide up. Empathetic listening is taking the perspective from the other person's seat and also try to uncover or be aware of that under the water iceberg, personal problems at home, anything like that. But then also from a business perspective, this job needs to get done, regardless of what you got under your iceberg. So I'll look at it from your perspective, but now we need to together look at it from the other perspective that's needed. You know, there can be multiple perspectives. So that's kind of something that struck me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, Jim. I think that part that you said with understanding, if you're using the empathetic thing, see underneath the iceberg if someone's reacting out of fear. So if I have a client and she's dismissive, I can say, okay, well, maybe it's because this is something new to her, but I'm here to educate and help you. So how do we get this done in 45 minutes because I have another client coming, right? And so really that's how we build our process now. Now that we know that, okay, this trigger may be fear and that's the overall emotion, but it's really coming from the unknown and not knowing. So can I be more informative in my presentation? You know, can I wear a softer color? Like, what does that really speak to? So once we know these 4 things, it's kind of hard not to know it, right? So once you're aware of it, now it's in your psyche and you're utilizing it, even though it seems so small. It's definitely a big aha. When you think about a conductor that is conducting an orchestra and they're listening for sound and they're bringing someone else in and they're using their instruments and things like that so that it makes a collective sound. They're using generative listening, right? But at first they're going through these different things and hearing what they don't, what's missing, or a producer, what's missing? What do I need to add to it? So what I want to do is just go back to that video and rewatch with the knowledge of knowing these 4 things and see where you go in and out. Where are those ahas where it's, yeah, I knew that already. I feel that same way. Oh, I can relate to him because he's in this generation. Or, oh, this is collectively good, right? So give me 1 second. I'm going to go back to it. I wish I could leave this up and have the thing playing in the background. But if you want to just take a visual of this or a screenshot or just recognize downloading, factual, empathetic, and generative. Those are our 4 levels. And pay attention to where you're using what.
So you're saying like through the course of it, where we go into these different types of listening and what kind of helps us get there? Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely what I'm saying. I'm just reading Joan's emotion. I'm sorry. I started to read the chat and do that. Lots of wordplay and it built emotion. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and Summer's having trouble with her mic. Summer, you can also try jumping out and back in if sometimes that helps, but No worries.
I'm going to go back. Okay.
So hold on a second. What are we doing with this?
You're re-listening with the knowledge of those 4 levels of listening and seeing where you are in certain parts. Are you downloading? Are you empathetic? Because it's not going to be the same throughout. And just have that awareness of when you click in and out of.
All right, thank you.
Introducing the new Apple iPerson Complete with multi-touch and volume control. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? My world is so digital. I have forgotten what that feels like. It used to be hard to connect when friends formed cliques, but it's even more difficult to connect now that cliques form friends. But who am I to judge? I face Facebook more than books face me, hoping to book face-to-faces. I update my status, 420 space to prove I'm still breathing. Failure to do this daily means my whole web-wide world will forget that I exist. But with 3,000 friends online, only 5 I can count in real life. Why wouldn't I spend more time in the world where there are more people that like me? Wouldn't you? Here, it doesn't matter if I'm an amateur person as long as I have a profile. My smile is 50% genuine and 50% genuine HD. You would need Blu-rays to read the whites of my teeth, but I'm not that focused. 10 tabs open, hoping my problems can be resolved, but a 1600 by 1700 revolution. This is a problem with this evolution doubled over. We used to sit in treetops till we swung down to stand upright and someone slipped a disc. Now we're doubled over at desktops. From the Garden of Eden to the branches of Macintosh, apple picking has always come at a great cost. iPod, iMac, iPhone, iChat, I can do all of these things without making eye contact. We used to sprint. We used to sprint to pick and store blackberries. Now we run to the Sprint store to pick blackberries. It's scary. I can't hear the sound of Mother Nature speaking over all that tweeting. And along with it is our ability to feel as it's fleeting. You would think these headphone jacks inject in the flesh the way we connect, the disconnect power on. So we are powerless. They got us love drugged like e-pills. So we e-trade, email, emotion like e-commerce because now money can buy love for $9.95 a month. Click to proceed to checkout. Click to X out where our hearts once were. Click. I've uploaded this hug. I hope she gets it. Click. I'm making love to my wife. I hope she's logged in. Click. I'm holding my daughter over a Skype conference call while she's crying in the crib in the next room. Click. So when my phone goes off on my hip, I touch and I touch and I touch because in a world where there are voices that are only read and laughter is never heard, I'm so desperate to feel that I hope the technology can reverse the universe so the screen can touch me back. And maybe it will when our technology is advanced enough to make us human again.
Okay. Notice anything different with understanding the different levels of listening?
One thing I realized is that was longer than the TikTok video, and I started losing interest. But refocusing and going, I really looked at his whole thing as factual because even though he like reversed, like, you know, I used to find friends that click. Now I click for friends and I face the Facebook more than a book faces me. And to me, that was factual. I feel that it's true as well. But then toward the end, as he gets going and he's also talking faster, and because my attention span wanes, I felt that he's kind of scared and wants to try to awaken civilization before we just become these digital drones.
Gotcha.
Jim, when he got faster there toward the end, especially like when he was pantomiming rocking a baby and like talking about being on a Skype call or whatever, you know, like I had a moment of thinking, I know that feeling, like not literally rocking a baby over Skype, but like, you know, where your phone's in your pocket and you're trying to do 8 things and you have to check back in, like, and the way that energy was really like, you know, transmitted, I did feel empathy. I felt like, oh, this is like a place both where I am confirming, yes, I know this, but also I think his emotion really connected with something that I could relate to. And you were saying it felt like fear, and I would say, yeah, I felt that sense of like a little bit of panic in that moment and really connected with the emotion there.
It made sense.
Mhm. What I heard you guys say is you went from one, understanding and relating, to three, empathetic and feeling, to four, generative. And what is that going to do to humanity as a whole? And that's where a lot of those things live, is in a generative state. As a whole, what does it do? What I didn't hear back from anyone so far is how it relates to you, your business, and how your messaging is coming across, or how do people relate to you when you're putting something out there? Jim, what you said was it was longer than a TikTok. So is that where our attention span is with getting information now? Like, does that change? Remember back in the day when we were doing elevator pitches and it was like, oh, how long are you in an elevator? Does that wording need to change? Is it no longer an elevator pitch? Are we now in a TikTok pitch? Like, and what does that look like?
I mean, and I used to help people put their resumes together, and I would say create an opening paragraph, and in the first 2 to 3 sentences, you better give them a reason to keep reading your resume for that job. You got to knock it out of the park, because people don't have time. We have short attention spans. If you're not captivating my attention in the first sentence or two, you're probably gone.
Absolutely. When I was hiring, I went through a Carmen system with the universities. And here's the thing, it scans for words that are similar. So if those words aren't hitting a 50% match in the first half of that thing, it's spitting it out. So it's not even a person reading it anymore, right? So you're really tailoring each of these things and each of these experiences for each group, because the wording has to be so exact.
Oh yeah, I think and I'm part of the reason I'm alluding to the chat is because I am aware that people who watch this won't see it, but I think Summer and Joan have an interesting kind of point that they're making here. Summer said that the second time she listened to it, she felt it more. The first time she understood it really well, like the words well, but she felt it more the second time. And then Joan is saying that it's like emotional pain points that allow her to gain new students or to connect with new clients. And it really makes me think, like, is part of what we sometimes miss in business messaging, that people have to kind of get past they have to get through the factual listening in order to advance and feel those emotions, right? Like they have to kind of understand the basics before they can really make that connection to the emotion, I think. Because I definitely felt his emotion more keenly the second time around when I wasn't trying to just tease out the actual words.
Mhm.
One thing that struck me too, I just coached high school kids on a business pitch, and 2 out of 3 of them would always make eye contact, but one in the group for some reason would never make eye contact. And when he said, iPhone, everything but eye contact,
Mhm.
that kind of struck, because I notice a lot of this young generation has quite difficulty making eye contact.
Right, right. I just seen Summer's thing about his t-shirt, Mileage High Club. And aesthetics is big for me, so I get that. Hmm. Okay. So just something to be aware of, and knowing these different levels of listening. If you go on YouTube, if you put in generative listening, MIT theory U, presencing, it all has to do with being present, right? So presencing is the actual course content, but these 4 levels fall into that. Okay. So with that in mind, we did stop, look, and listen. So we stopped, that was us stopping today, looking at our patterns and things like that, and then listening, really taking the time to bring the things in. That goes against that urgent culture, that over processing, that overwhelm that we can feel in business, especially with so many outside pressures. So stop, look, and listen. Think about it like in a car when you're driving. The stop sign isn't meant to slow you down and make you late, right? It's meant to keep you safe. And a lot of times in business, it feels like we can't stop. It feels like that we're going to be behind. We're going to miss something. Someone's going to get something that we missed. Where in reality, we do need to be able to stop, look both ways, have clarity, and then proceed. So thinking about that, business nervous system scan. Just like in our body, whenever something comes that gives us a stress, you can feel it. Sometimes you feel it in your neck, in your shoulders, things like that. Um, Businesses have that too. So what I want to do is just a quick nervous system scan for your business. And what I want you to do is, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes and soften your gaze. Take a breathe in, slowly exhale. And then when I mention certain things, scan your body and see where you feel it. Where do you feel that stress? Got it? All right. So if you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes, soften your gaze. Take in a deep breath. Exhale. And think about your financial systems. Think about the financial systems within your business. When you hear the word money, pricing, invoices, expenses, payroll, debt, profit, sustainability. Do you notice if your shoulders tighten? Does your jaw clench? Does your stomach drop? Or do you feel calm? Do you feel avoidance? Or do you feel confident? Just simply notice, no need to answer. Now, thinking about communication systems, emails, text messages, phone calls, employees, customers, conflict, expectations, constant responsiveness. In your body, do you feel tension, exhaustion, pressure, frustration, or a calmness or a relief? Or just simply noticing. And then we're going to do one more. Operational systems. Thinking about the day-to-day operations of your business. Think about your systems, your processes, your scheduling, delegation, workflow, repeated problems, and the things that depend heavily on you. Do you feel fatigue? Do you feel pressure, overwhelmed, or do you feel confidence? Do you feel in control, or just simply confused? Now, if you can just take one deep breath in and slowly exhale, and then come back. What we call there is just a nervous system scan in your business. A lot of times we do that with our bodies when the trauma is going on or when you have to make tough decisions. What I want to do now is just take 5 minutes to yourself, see the screen, and then answer those things. If you have a pen and pad, if you do it on your phone, just what did you notice? Which business system created the strongest reaction in your body? What physical reactions did you notice? And what emotions surfaced? And then part 2 of that is, where do I need to pause instead of react? Where do I need to look at patterns, systems, and behaviors? And then if it's something that you are dealing with within the business or where you feel these type of stressors that happens. I see, I believe it was Joan who says that you live in constant stress. so you don't notice when something is feeling stressful. I lost my chat screen. Hold on 1 second. That you feel like your body doesn't even shift when confronted with these things. So do you feel like you're naturally just always tight, or that the stress is just always visible? Instead of debriefing about that exercise and going through those, what I'd like to do is debrief in a more creative way. If we had more people, we would do breakout sessions, but being that there's only a few of us, we'll just do them right here. If you guys are comfortable being on camera with it, we can do that. Or Katie, if you want to stop recording, we can stop recording and get into a nitty-gritty discussion.
Do you want to maybe introduce how this is done, and then I'll stop it before we start doing it, just so that people can hear that?
Yep. So there will be two sets of two different roles that is happening. One, the entrepreneur. So whenever you're sharing about what you just experienced, what I'm just revamping this a little bit from it being a breakout session, excuse me, and processing in real time. Okay. So there'll be one person who's sharing, everyone else is listening. The role of the listener is to notice what level of listening they're using. Are they being empathetic because they feel it too? Are they listening for what they don't know, or downloading to what they do know? And then generatively, how is that happening? The interviewer, an entrepreneur, is explaining what they felt, what what topic felt the most pressure, and what do they feel needs their presence in the current time, so they're not tackling everything at once. What feels the most pressing in the business right now? What is that pattern that keeps repeating in this situation? Because usually it's nothing that just happened overnight. So what is the pattern? And then underlying conditions. What do you think is that underlying condition that keeps this, going? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Mhm.
does.
So both roles are active. We have active listeners, and then you have the entrepreneur that's sharing. We may not solve it today, but sometimes seeing it, having awareness, having other people who feel the same thing can open your eyes to something that maybe you've already missed, or a solution.
All right, I'm going to pause the recording.